sometimes people who are trying to follow the God of the Bible get God wrong. We don't quite understand how God is in himself or how God really wants to interact with us. And so these wrong ways of thinking can not just affect individuals, but whole groups of people, cultures, and therefore you get this whole wide group of people who just don't quite understand the very God that they think is so important to them. And then what usually happens is that God needs to send a prophet or a teacher, usually a kind of controversial teacher, to correct what his people have been thinking. And Jesus plays this role sometimes in his life. He comes in and he's got his own people to correct in the ways that they are thinking. And one of the places where he is doing that is in the Beatitudes. Hey everybody, welcome to the Sanctus Forum. I am Michael Stewart Robb, better known as Mike. Sanctus, we're interested in theology and spiritual formation in Europe and in churches. And I say theology, and theology you can kind of think of as what happens when followers of Jesus start to think well. And thinking well is, I think, very important and not often done very often or well. And so one of the things that's always important for thinking well is books, and that's something we talk about here on the channel. And today we'll be talking about a book, you've probably already guessed it, The Divine Conspiracy by Dallas Willard. Very important book, and also a misunderstood book. Dallas Willard, I've said this before, isn't well understood in terms of what he's saying about the Beatitudes. And what he was saying was not typical. It was new for his day, and by and large, even the people that really like him, like his book, I think we just do not understand what he's doing in them. And if you want to disagree with something or agree with something, the first step is really being able to understand it. Now, it's rainy today, which is nice for being inside and doing videos and reading books and working. We don't have air conditioning in Germany, so the cooler days in the summer are always good work days. Yesterday was quite nice, and I finished this book, Experiencing Scripture as a Disciple of Jesus, Reading the Bible Like Dallas Willard. And it's a good book. I'm not going to review the book or anything. I do wonder if I should review popular books like this, which have to do with Dallas Willard. If you think I should, then let me know. This one is by Dave Ripper. Hi, Dave, in case you see this. But as you would expect, he has to deal with how Dallas reads the Bible, and so things like the Beatitudes come up, and I was reminded yesterday, because he doesn't exactly like how Dallas reads the Beatitudes. He wants to belong to those who think that he's misunderstood something, and that's fine, but it reminded me how, again, people don't really get what he's up to, and I don't think he's written this chapter very well, and I think he should have done something different because people don't get it. Now, the section for today is rather simple. It's teaching to correct prevailing assumptions and practices. All of these sections around this part of the book are going to be about Jesus's way of teaching, and the idea here is that Jesus sometimes will use a concrete case to correct a general assumption or practice. And Dallas thinks this is what he's doing in the Beatitudes. He's using concrete cases to correct a general assumption or practice. But that's not the only time that Jesus does that. Jesus also does it in with the rich young ruler. And so here's a person that comes to him. You probably already know the story. The prevailing assumption is that if you're rich as a member of God's people, then you're blessed. God has clearly supported you in your life, and for that reason, you can see a direct connection between the success that you've had in material things and God's blessing. And the case is, well, here's a man who loves his wealth more than he loves God. And so, as you know in the story, the rich man walks away, can't separate himself from his wealth, and step even closer to God through following Jesus. But I don't think we're really dealing with this quite in the same way that Jesus had to deal with it in his culture. I think we have generally recognized that wealth isn't necessarily a sign of God's blessing. I know there are places that are affected by prosperity gospel things, and then the opposite, a sort of sense that if you have given up all of your belongings, then God cares about you. God cares only about the poor. That also is kind of thing that we will see, but I think in general people don't associate the two. I think for us, something that might be more equivalent to what Jesus was doing with the rich young ruler is the assumption that if you are well known and a member of God's people, then you are blessed. That God has been involved in your life in a special, particular way in order for you to rise to prominence and gain a lot of attention, have name recognition, have people want to talk to you. That must mean that God's involved because you do confess Christ. And so if you think about famous preachers or authors, speakers, if you think about politicians, or you think about artists or people, business people or sports players, all these people who have some kind of notoriety, and to think that they're connected with Jesus. Clearly that notoriety and being connected with Jesus must be God's blessing in their life. And I think that's much harder for us today to get out of. So what we would need are cases. We would need to see then a particular famous person, Christian, who loves their fame more than they love God, who wouldn't dare give it up. If that meant that they could follow God more closely, follow Jesus more closely, they hold on to it just like the rich young man held on to his wealth. We would also need other kinds of cases, like we'd need to find people who aren't famous, who aren't well known, but who do have the special attention of God. And you might measure that in various ways, like God answers their prayers. They have a clear amount of faith, hope, and love, peace, love, joy. They have particular power. Lots of different ways to sort of see that God is connected with a particular person. And you can imagine a prophet coming along, and we really do need this. We need prophetic people to speak about this and say, hey, this way of thinking, it doesn't help. It's not true. God isn't like that. That isn't one of the ways that God works. He doesn't just work through people who are prominent and well known. And I think we actually have some prophets who have been saying that kind of thing. I just wonder if we've actually been listening to them. At any rate, I hope that helps you get a little bit clearer on what Dallas is doing in the Bible and with something like the Beatitudes. And if it does, let me know. You can send emails to info@sanctus.institute, and you can also go to our website, which isn't very good, we're finding out, sanctus.institute. Sign up for newsletters, and then you can hear more about what we do. Till next time, bye.